Hello and welcome to Move the Line Prop Drop Show. I'm Ryan Noonan, back for the Divisional Round weekend to talk about the best way and the most profitable way to bet on NFL football, and that is through player props. Again, live 2 p.m. Eastern every Friday, all the way through the Super Bowl, giving you our favorite props and taking your questions. So if you're hanging out with us now on YouTube, subscribe so you don't miss a show. Smash the like button and jump in the chat. Let us know what your favorite prop for the week is. Again, loaded card at this time of the week. We have been pretty lucky the last couple of weeks to have a lot of stuff to talk about here, even though we only have 4 games. So we'll do our best to get to as many of the questions, assuming that they're good, at the end of the show. Joining me here, as always, with his brand new, bougie, fancy mug, Connor Allen. How we doing?
Good. Yeah. Shout out to Ember Mugs, keeping my coffee and tea warm there. You know, not an advertiser of the show, but if you want to be and you're listening, reach out, because we definitely would like to make some contact there. But it's exciting, man. We have tons of props on the board. We don't have like a ton of the smaller guys, but we have a lot. And so I have more than 4 plays for the show if we want to get into it. But I think a ton to talk about here.
Love it. We can get promo code Mayo for 30% off of an Amber mug at some point, I'm guessing, right? Omaha Steaks works. AG Greens works. Why not promo code Mayo?
Any sponsor out there that would love to have a promo code Mayo attached to it, then I can make that happen. I know the guy who does that.
It's pretty good. Man, obviously in charge of the Mayo Media Network and the Pat Mayo Experience. It is Pat Mayo himself. How are we doing today?
Doing well. I, unlike Connor, do not have an overflow of plays for the week. All the numbers that I got in on 2 days ago, even yesterday, have all changed in the opposite direction. So I guess that's good that I have a better number than is out there, but it sucks now that we're doing the show and like here's Friday afternoon. And I guess during the playoffs, we need to move the show to a Tuesday when it drops.
I know it's an interesting thing. I had a bunch of tackle props this morning that we posted in the 4for4 Discord, and the subscribers have absolutely nuked them. So I really can't even give them out. I have a couple of one that I still can because it was a plus money bet, and it's, I think, still bettable. And then some other, possible ones that we'll get to here at the end of the show. But this is why you need to be in the Discord, subscriber only Discord at 4for4. Again, we are almost at the end of the season, but our betting subscription goes to the end of February. It'll cover obviously everything that's on the sites, all of our bets. $19 right now, 4for4.com/plans. Again, still NBA picks, college hoops, MMA. If you are in any of the pick'em games, Vivid, Prize Picks, Underdog, we have specific channels for all of those as well. Post plays, and again, a very, very active subscriber base with sharp people that are posting plays of their own now as well that you can get in there if you just want to degen with some of the folks that are in the chat and watching games and sweat with the community. It's a great place to be. $19, 4for4.com/plans. Again, only through the end of February. That's why it's only $19. But again, you'll get all of the picks that Connor and I post right away. You get push notifications set up through the Discord. So we're still doing our Move the Line game previews, so some more sides and totals. That again is still going. So if you subscribe to the audio podcast, rate and review that as well. We really appreciate that. And then also here on the YouTube channel, you'll get that one as well. Not quite sure when we're doing the conference championship one next week. I have some other stuff that I have going on. So not on the Wednesday spot, but either Tuesday or Thursday or Friday. I don't know. We'll have a show for you to talk about those 2 games whenever they pop up. So, all right, Connor, let you get started. You got a lot. We'll do 4, but when we get to the 4th one, you can kind of unload whatever else is on your card that you want to share that's still live, or any other prospective looks here, though. So first play for the divisional round.
For sure. I have an unusual amount of overs this week, but I'm going to start with one of my unders. I like Joe Mixon to go under 48.5 rushing yards. And the big story has been, how will the Bengals offensive line hold up without Jonah Williams, without Alex Kappa, Lyle Collins? Heading to Buffalo? Everyone's worried about Joe Burrow, but I'm really worried about Joe Mixon. The Bills 3rd in run DVOA. On top of this, Bills 5.5 point favorites. Mixon's gone like under this number in roughly half of his games. but given the matchup and offensive line injuries, I think it's going to be pretty tough for him. He's averaged just 3.4 yards per carry since his O-line started getting, beat up against New England. Now, some of those games, multiple games were against Baltimore, but still, if we look at his games against top 10 run defenses, he's averaged fewer than 3 yards per carry in 6 of those 9 games. And so given all those factors here, I really think that there's volume concerns if Buffalo gets out to a big lead. And then there's obviously massive efficiency because even if Cincy keeps it close or decides to go run heavy, which I think both Noonan and you and I agree that that's probably not what's going to happen given the mismatch up front. I mean, their offensive line is probably worse than it was last year in the playoffs. I mean, they're starting one of the backups, and I don't think it's going to impact the passing game as much as most people are anticipating, but I think it'll impact Joe Mixon in the running game quite a bit.
Yeah, we've seen a massive pass rate over expectation all season from the Bengals. We've seen it even higher since Jamar Chase has returned. And there's still Buffalo's doesn't have the stout defense that they did early in the season, but still over like the last 8 weeks or so, they're still top 3 in rush defense DVOA. So against this team with a bad offensive line, like you want to give it to Burrow, let him make decisions. I don't think all of a sudden you tune into a like massive run heavy team. So Pat, what do you got here? What are your thoughts on Mixon?
I'm there with Mixon. My first under is actually in the same game on the other side of the ball, and it was 44.5, then it was 43.5. It is now down to 38.5, and I still have the projection coming under this number for Devin Singletary in terms of his rushing yards, because the way that you need to split it up is, you can get into a script if the game goes a little bit like we saw on the onset of the Monday night game between these two, where the Bengals jump out to a lead. The Bills just aren't going to run the ball whatsoever. It's just not going to happen. They hate running the ball as it is. So them in a negative game script for rushing, they're probably not going to run all that much. So you also have the ability to split carries with James Cook. We've been seeing James Cook get all of these carries out of the backfield, very similar or sometimes even more to Devin Singletary. So he's going to need to be hyper efficient on his carries to begin with. And as Connor's been pointing out for the past few weeks, the Bengals rush defense, although it didn't really come to fruition last week, still very good, especially against the lower tier of running backs, the middle to lower tier where Singletary really fits. And then the added concern is Josh Allen is just going to inherently steal rushing attempts away from these guys, whether not all of Josh Allen's rushing attempts come at the expense of Singletary or Cook, but let's say 4 or 5 a game do. Well, then all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 fewer rushing attempts that actually go to these guys. So tougher defense, lack of efficiency, triple-headed monster really in the rushing game for the Bills just has me leaning way under on Devin Singletary, even at 38.5.
Yeah, last few games too, 43% of the carries, 42% of the carries. So like it feels like, and on the year it's 46. So like he's been trending down, and that's a lot of that is kind of like popped up from earlier this season where they weren't even really using James Cook in the rush game. So not a problem with that one at all, Connor. I gave that a long look yesterday too. Any initial reaction to Singletary?
No, I really like it. I was trying to figure out the best way to play it because on top of that too, James Cook has outcarried him for now 2 straight weeks as well. Yeah. So like I think like you said, the tides are shifting towards that, and this is seems like one of those games where they might just like throw almost every play, given they've allowed like half a yard less per carry when the Bengals have DJ Reader since week 13. They're 3rd in run DEPA as well. So like I mean, everything you said there just lines up. The matchup is tough. I was looking at attempts. I mean, there was a Devin Singletary 10.5 attempts that popped this morning. I didn't get on it soon enough. I would have really liked that under. But now it's like 9.5. And then like Pat said, 38, 39 rushing yards. I still lean under. I just don't know. It's like, it feels hard to take something like that that's already opened at like 44, 45. But I did play this under actually officially when in the original game between these two teams, but that obviously did not play out. So yeah, I still like it though. I still think it's a solid look.
Yeah, I like it too. Just feels like it's trending down, and I'm with you. I think this is a game where both teams are chucking a ton. It's just kind of their MO, and I think you just kind of lean on that in comfortable spots in the playoffs. And yeah, I like this Bengals defense. I think it is a tough matchup too. So you can, even have a spike, to Pat's point, you can have a spike in Singletary work and probably still fall under this number. So, all right, so I'm going to stay in the same game with my first one. Kind of in the same mode. Jamar Chase over 7.5 receptions, plus 110 on Caesars. Played this yesterday at plus 115. I still think, again, still dealing with plus money here. I think it's a great look. I like the Bengals in the spot, really, regardless of game script. I think this is going to be a very heavy pass rate over expectation spot. Like I mentioned earlier, On the season, they are tops, but they are massively above really anyone else. Since Chase got back in week 13, the Bengals pass rate over expectation is 11.4%. For context, the Bucs are third in that time frame at 4%. So like they're just leaving it up to Joe Burrow and letting him diagnose. And because I think the offensive line is a problem here, it might be counterintuitive, but I think they aren't going to want to run behind a really bad offensive line into a really stout defensive front. I think they're going to execute a pretty quick passing game. We've seen that a little bit lower ADOT from Burrow as of late too. So that's worked out really well for Jamar Chase. It's insane 34% target share since he came back in week 13. On the season, it's still, north of 25%. And it's really felt like more of a separation from T. Higgins of late, where it's, he's kind of like the guy versus them being like 1A, 1B. 13 targets per game since he's been back. He's topped this number in 3 straight for the past 5. And I think that's going to be a problem with the Bills secondary. We're talking a lot about the Bengals offensive line, and I don't think we're talking enough about the Bills defensive backs and the injuries that they have there. Now that DeMar Hamlin, thank God, is fine, we can talk about the football impact. He's a second stringer. He's in there for Micah Hyde, who's still out. They are now playing Dean Marlowe at like 90% of the snaps. Dean Marlowe was so bad that the Lions cut him. He couldn't get on the field for Atlanta this year, and now he is playing almost every snap for Buffalo. Skylar Thompson couldn't take advantage of Dean Marlowe. Joe Burrow was going to. And they move Chase around so much, they're going to find mismatches. I love Chase to get fed in this game, plus money over 7.5. Connor, I know it's a big number. It's not somewhere that you typically go, but any thoughts on it?
No, I like it. I mean, I don't know. I think that I agree with you now more and more on this game. After initially I was really worried about like the offense. I think that they'll find a way, but yeah, I think the number is just a little too high for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But I don't know if the yards is a better look either, because like I think that there's a chance that they're not very efficient, but they do pass a lot. So maybe like a Burrow's completion prop or a Burrow's attempt prop, I think could be interesting tue. I haven't actually looked into that, but that's probably where my head would go initially.
I like the same game parlay, Pat, with Burrow completions and Chase. What are your thoughts on this matchup anyway? It's been we've talked about it a lot in our Discord. We have very different opinions. We'll have to get your thoughts on kind of this matchup and the Chase prop.
I have a hard time capping this game, to be perfectly honest with you, outside of like 1 or 2 pieces of it that I really like and how I can see that the game is going to go. Like the Bengals passing game is just confounding to me. My poor guy, Trenton Irwin, couldn't even get on the field last week. Now I'm looking at Hayden Hurst over 3.5 reception props. Now that Hurst is back, we talk about the check down, the lower ADOT. He is a part of that. Remember, like he was gone for so long.
Yeah.
That now just having that safety blanket back on the field and, with a deteriorated offensive line, getting the ball out faster, that makes a lot of logical sense that Hayden Hurst would be the one that is more targeted in this spot. So I would prefer that look. Even Mixon receptions. What's Mixon receptions at? Mixon 3.5. See, that's too many.
3.5.
Yeah. So Daigle was talking about Samaje Perine on our show the other day, which was interesting too. Just that Perine is even though he didn't get a lot, when you look at like routes run, last week Perine ran a route on 50% of the dropbacks. Mixon was just at 24%, which is a massive drop off from where he's been, because he's been like right around 45% all season. So I don't know if that's a 1-game blimp, but that was interesting to see. Even though Perine didn't do a lot with it, it looked like a shift in job security. My pushback on the Hayden Hurst thing is, first of all, Buffalo's been really good against tight ends. And my thought is, if they do want to do some stuff to help protect the offensive line, don't you either leave a tight end in the block or at least chip pre-snap at times? And that might slow down Hayden Hurst and maybe make him more of a traditional tight end versus a routes run tight end in the spot. That would be my only concern with Hayden Hurst.
Well, what have been his routes run the past 2 weeks?
He has been out there a good amount, 74 and 79% the past 2 weeks.
So I would say that he was more needed last week against Baltimore than he will be this week against Buffalo.
Yeah, that's fair. And then 79%, I mean, that's, again, for a tight end outside of the alphas, 79% route participation is elite. So
Also,
yeah, I looked at it a little bit. That was my only thought, was just thinking, like, what would they do different to protect? It would probably be the tight end. And a chip doesn't mean that he's not going to get out there still.
Yeah, and Von Miller's not there either. So I mean, since losing Von Miller, the Bills 16th in pressure rate as well. So it's not like they've been getting a ton of pressure. And like you mentioned before, like they're not a team that necessarily blitzes a ton. They generally try and get pressure up front and then kind of sit back, force mistakes. And so yeah, I mean it's just gonna be a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow to make things happen here.
Yeah, this is props. We talked about this a little bit on the Wednesday show, but like the Ravens defense is like the bugaboo a little bit for the Bengals. Mike McDonald does a lot of different things pre-snap. When you look at all the different iterations of like formations that they use a bunch. They do a lot of different stuff. And Burrow's success rate against non-Ravens teams this year was north of 50%. In the 3 games against the Bengals, 33%. They have his number somehow. I went and looked at formations for the Bills. They used one formation against the Dolphins. They have like 2-3 versions that they use all season. They are straightforward. This is what we do, and then beat us. And I think that is a little bit of, it's just easier for Burrow in this spot. So I'm bullish on the Bengals. I think the Burrow doesn't mean that the Bills can't win. They're just going to have to light it up. That means, I think, a lot of points, but I think you see some success from this passing game. So I like Chase. I like plus money. And Connor, back to you. What's your second pick?
My second one is Dak Prescott over 13.5 rushing yards. A subscriber at 44 actually pointed this out to me a day or so ago. You can find it still minus 120 at MGM. It's a little bit juiced at other shops, but I think that I'd probably play it up to 15.5 where it's at some other places as well. Dak has 16 or more rushing yards in 5 of the past 6 games, averaging 5.5 rush attempts per game during that span, coming off a game where he had 24 yards on 7 carries against the Tampa Bay team that normally plays a ton of zone. As we've talked about, we generally like to target running quarterbacks against man, but Dak still was able to get there against a zone-heavy team. And on top of this, Niners are able to get a ton of pressure. Just allowed 428 to Geno Smith, who I think is, I guess, a somewhat reasonable comparison to Dak in terms of running. Like, he's not going to have a ton of designed runs or anything, just kind of has to scramble to get there. So getting flushed out of the pocket a little bit. And not to mention Dak in the playoffs has run more than he normally has as well. Multiple games over 20 yards. So it doesn't necessarily qualify for the study that we did at 4 for 4 that boosts QB rushing yards. But I think that kind of the theory here is the same, especially a guy like Dak who is, fairly athletic, who can get out of the pocket, who can move. So I really like this over 13.5. I think he could easily end up with 20 plus. And on MGM, you can kind of put some same game parlays together of like 20 plus, 25 plus. I think that the ceiling here for him is really high on his rushing yards.
You mentioned there was one time he didn't hit it, and I think that was the time that I gave it out as a play, of course. But I like it. I mean, that I'm on this. I will kind of piggyback that here in a moment. What are your thoughts here, Pat?
I had this as my number 4 play, so now I need to go find a new one.
Sorry, Pat.
Thanks. No, I love it. I saw exactly what you saw, or what the 4 for 4 sub saw at least.
Yeah, Mayo stamp of approval. Like it. Yeah. Like you said, Connor's referencing, if you weren't around, we actually, TJ Hernandez, our DFS guru, did some work on this last year after we talked about it more as like a concept, but did some work in looking at quarterbacks that average over 30 rushing yards per game. They average 6.5, I think, rushing yards more per game in the playoffs. So Dak falls under that. That'll be something that I'm not going to task for TJ. I'll do it myself here in the offseason and see. We'll lower the threshold to like 15 yards and see if there's anything that's sticky there in terms of quarterback rushing yards.
I think almost just eliminating like pure pocket passers
Sure.
is probably the way to go. Like Brady's not going to get outside the pocket and scramble, but like even a guy like Rodgers, we saw down the stretch, like if he needed, like if they were playing in those must-win games, like he was running a bunch, and so like he's getting over that number, and his number was like 2.5. So I don't know, just worth looking at maybe.
For sure. All right, Pat, number 2.
I'm gonna say Lawrence actually falls into that as well.
For sure.
And he didn't have to do it last week, but they were just in pure pass mode last week. And that's how it turned out. It's still 15.5 for him, and the over is quite juiced up. But I am not going with a player prop. I'm going with a game prop for my second look here. I couldn't figure out exactly who I wanted to target, so I was like, hey, I might as well target the entire game. Giants and Philly over 5.5 sacks total at even money. So I think the Eagles could get there by themselves. So I really like this one.
Do you have a book for that? Is that 365?
DraftKings Sportsbook is the book.
I wish books would post more team props like this.
I've been waiting for this one all week. It just popped up.
Love it. 5.5 sacks.
And it's hard to find.
Yeah. You can find these on they do not game. They do team sacks on Prize Picks, which I like. Those numbers are typically pretty soft if anyone is playing there for those. But yeah, I like this 5.5. I haven't done any of the homework on it, but I like that they're available. I'll have to go check out that market. I like these.
Well, it seems to be depressed because Minnesota couldn't get home at all last week. Minnesota couldn't do anything defensively last week. And it's really reflected in a lot of the Giants lines this week. Like, if you just played blind unders on the Giants this week, I feel like you'd come out way ahead.
Yeah.
I
looked at Hodgins. I looked at Richie James. I looked at Slayton. I guess the issues that I kept running into with each of them was like, okay, Hodgins' usage is like way up lately. And he did play in the slot a decent amount, which is like technically the Eagles' weakness without, Maddox. I mean, if you want to point to something. And then Slayton, I mean, he's just been we've talked about it like every week. He's just one of those guys who just seems to somehow get there. He's going to have that 1 or 2 deep balls. If he catches it, he's going over. If he doesn't, then he's going to have like 20 yards. And so I agree that you probably just bet all the unders and probably 2 of the 3 hit here in this spot. I also like the Eagles, though, to just like clean up on the Giants. So I don't know if that's a contrarian opinion or not, but I think that's kind of where I'm at.
I see that game the same way that you do. And I think that we saw exactly what we were talking about with Slayton last week. There was like a broken play sometime in either the early 4th or late 3rd quarter. Daniel Jones he bobbled the snap, or someone didn't go the right way. He just kind of rolled out, and instead of throwing it away or sliding or doing whatever, what did he do? He just threw up like a 35-yard lob ball to Darius Slayton in the end zone. He probably should have caught it, and he didn't. But like, it's like, oh yeah, here's a play. Go to you, Darius. You're in the end zone. Like, they just, when forced to do something under pressure, he just kind of hucks it up to Slayton. So it's always terrifying with that.
I think you're right, though, Connor. If you kind of just across the board take shots at him, you're probably going to hit 2 or 3. Same thing like Daniel Bellinger is a guy that I looked at long and hard.
Daniel Bellinger sucks.
Yeah, he sucks. There's nothing after the catch. Like, it's just his unders are intriguing to me as well.
Has he hit an over this season?
like once, I think, because his over under was like 10 yards or something like that, and he caught like 1 pass.
Well, he had the 48 yards in the week 18 game against Indy, and that propped up whatever he had last week. I think he was like 22.5 last week, and he ended up with 17 yards. And he did end up catching a touchdown last week as well, which is kind of crazy. But like, he doesn't really do anything. He had a nice stretch at the beginning of the year, I guess, when he was averaging like 25 yards a game. But every time that you look at his over under, it's like, this seems about 10 to 15 yards too high for Daniel Bellinger.
Also, Lawrence Cager played more than usual last week as well. Like, he kind of started eating into some of Daniel Bellinger's stuff, who ran less routes, I believe, ran fewer routes than he did previously.
Yeah, we don't have his number. I mean, I have relevant to like how much he's gone over the current number, but I don't know about his over under hit rate per se. But yeah, I mean, let's look at that route participation. We're going to add a Daniel Bellinger under live. Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing. Like, last week he ran a route on 83% with a 6% target share. Like, he's 3 weeks ago, 94% route participation, 4% target share. That is very, very hard to do. So, yeah, you can sell me on Bellinger under yards, under receptions here in a big way. Even with obviously anticipated negative game script, it just is not anything that they get excited about. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting look. I'll dive in more for sure. That could be a play for sure.
All right, number 2 for me. I'm going to stay with the same drum beat that Connor did. I'm going to go Pat Mahomes over 23.5 rushing yards. This is on DraftKings. This is on Caesars. Mahomes again falls short of the threshold that we're looking for here, but on the season, in his career, 19 yards per game on the ground in the regular season. That is 29.4 yards, 10.4 yards more per game in the playoffs. Just will die on this hill. 39 yards in the matchup against Jacksonville earlier this season, if that means anything to you. We've seen an improved pass rush for Jacksonville with Tavon Walker, Josh Allen kind of, collapsing pockets a little bit more. So Mahomes is a willing runner, and this is one of those spots where, again, like, he can get this on 2 carries. You won't need the 7 attempts that he had last time against Jacksonville. So 23.5 is an over. Gentlemen, Pat, will go to you. Any thoughts on Mahomes?
He can get there. He's not the quarterback I like the most in terms of these. Dak was obviously my preference, but coming up, I do have another quarterback that I'm taking the over on in a rushing prop. So I wouldn't touch this one.
Yeah. Mahomes, I think, is kind of the impetus, Connor, when we started doing this. It was like, hey, Mahomes runs in the playoffs all the time. And the numbers just kind of bear that out.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. I don't remember. Maybe it was against like the Titans or something, and he was just scrambling a bunch. Like he'll get like 30 yards just in the 2-minute drill before the first half alone. I guess my only concern is that they beat the Jags so bad that he doesn't have to run, but I think that he can easily get there before that happens. I mean, I just really expect the Chiefs to score like the more I break down this game, like 35 to 40 points here. So how that happens, I'm not entirely sure, but probably through the air and maybe some running.
They jumped out quick early the last time they met in week 10, and Mahomes still got to 39. So,
yeah,
again, even in negative script, they still are a pass-heavy team. So they're still dropping back in the second half, up 21, right? They also have in the back of their minds the Bengals game last year too, right? Where you can't really let your foot off the gas. And I think you see Mahomes do whatever he needs to here. So
do you think that the Jags play more man defense this time? They played like a ton of zone last time and just got absolutely torched. I mean, there's also a chance they play more man, but I don't even know if that matters because they're going to get like they don't match up well at all either way. So
I don't think they play a ton of man. I was looking at that for a specific tackle play too, because there's something that would be impactful in terms of if they did that, there'd be an underlook for sure on the board, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I think they still are more zone heavy than man. It's just such a bad matchup to go man against Mahomes. He typically destroys man. So
for sure.
All right, Pat, back to you folks. A reminder to, if you're hanging out, jump in the chat. Let us know what you like, Pat.
Is it me or is it Connor?
I'm sorry, Connor.
Oh yeah, it's me. All right. So my third one here is Miles Sanders over 66.5 rushing yards. I absolutely love this one. So I think there's some context is important here. He already gassed the Giants earlier this season, and we were on his over as well. 144 yards on 17 carries, but came into their last meeting banged up. And we go through the past few weeks here. Week 17 against New Orleans, he came in with a knee brace and was clearly not right. And then week 18 against the Giants was on the injury report, was limited in practice all week, and then played, I would say, better. He didn't play with the knee brace, but he still wasn't fully there. Only 33 yards on 11 carries. Had a couple of good runs early on, but it clearly wore down on him. But that was also without Lane Johnson on the offensive line. So this like 2 weeks that they've gotten to get healthy, I think is massive for this Eagles team. So they get Lane Johnson back on the offensive line. Miles Sanders fully healthy, not in the injury report at all. The Giants right now, dead last in run defense DVOA, 31st in EPA against the run, 31st in explosive run rate allowed. And not to mention on top of that, bottom 3 defending the run on early downs. Eagles are, I think, one of the top 3 teams at running on early downs. So also wouldn't surprise me for them to even run more because of Jalen Hurts' injury, SC joint sprain. I think that they still lay it on him no matter what, but I think there's always a chance later in the game that they run the ball a little bit more than they normally would.
I like it. I tailed it. Pat, what are your thoughts on Sanders?
I'd rather just bet Boston Scott anytime touchdown.
Yeah, it is a very tilting backfield to have bets on for sure. So I get it. Yeah. Connor, I think you capped it well though. It's you'll see that too. Like, all right, you got a Sanders play and he's just on the bench for the first like 2 possessions of the game. What is he doing? He'll still end up getting like 15 carries and playing really well, but they just, I don't know, they get fancy. I don't even know what it is. I don't even think it's matchup specific. Yeah. Weird.
I have no idea what they're doing, but hopefully he still gets there. I think he will. Matchup, I mean, if he gets like 10 to 12 carries, I think he'll actually still get here against this defense. Also, if you do think he sees the majority of the work, you can bet on him to have the most rushing yards of the slate at plus 600, which I know is, pretty big, but still it's like Saquon, who I'm not very high on, and then him, and then there's one more other favorite as well.
McCaffrey?
Yeah, McCaffrey. So it's, I mean, for me, plus 600 of him versus McCaffrey, basically.
Well, I mean, Barkley can get there. That you probably shouldn't overlook that part of him just being awesome. Yeah. But Sanders is the lead running back of the highest ranked favorite on this slate. So Barkley is an underdog. I guess McCaffrey's there, but you don't really attribute all of the rushing yards to Christian McCaffrey. You know that, I mean, we tried to play Elijah Mitchell last week. He got the carries. It didn't really work out for us. When you had 4 carries for -4 yards to start the game, that wasn't great. Although he was getting all the touches like inside of the red zone. So I guess that was encouraging, I suppose, if you were trying to project him out. I would think that Etienne or Pacheco would be the 2 that I would look at. Like, what are their odds in that market? I never even look at this market because I think it's a stupid market, but you've piqued my interest now.
It's pretty ridiculous. Let me look it up. I believe they were both around 10 to 1, if I remember correctly, or maybe ETN was like 8 and he was 10.
That's such garbage.
Yeah, the hold is insane.
It is. It's complete garbage. All right, we got plus 500 for Saquon, plus 500 for Miles Sanders now, plus 500 for ETN, and plus 600 for McCaffrey. You have plus 800 for the field, and then 10-1 on Pacheco.
So I feel like McCaffrey's probably a solid play now.
I mean,
McCaffrey has to be the best play of that bunch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, McCaffrey was the favorite when I checked this morning. So he was like plus 450 or plus 500. And then Sanders was like, down the board a little bit. And so was ETN, but I don't know. It is a bad market.
Yeah, those markets were fun last year. You can get in real early, find a couple of bad numbers, but they get absolutely just crushed so quickly and then just collapse. So,
yeah.
All right. Now, this time, Pat, number 3.
My quarterback prop of the day, now that the Dak Prescott one is out for me, Josh Allen, over 8.5 rushing attempts, even money this week. He ran the ball 4 times against the Dolphins last week. One of the leading causes of why they didn't jump on me, they jumped out to a big lead, but couldn't hold on to that big lead. With Cincinnati dialing it up a little bit, must-win situation, we're just going to see Allen running a bunch. I truly believe that. So I like the over of his rushing yards as well, but I think that's up to 48.5 now, up from 43.5. So I just think that he ends up running double-digit times in this game. Anytime he sees pressure based on what we've seen recently. He's throwing the ball into traffic. He's throwing the ball deep for no reason. He's going to take off and run for 20 yards. Shouldn't be a problem.
Should have done it last week. I love that play last week, and shocked that they did not run against Miami, who plays a bunch of man and plays, blitzes a ton. It just is like the perfect matchup, and they just didn't do it. Bunch of YOLO balls. It was a very bizarre Josh Allen game. But Connor, it's kind of within the narrative still, right? I kind of like the carries over the yards.
Yeah, no, I like it either way. And I think they're going to have a bunch of designed runs. I think this Bengals defense is a little bit overrated too. So I don't know. I know I'm talking trash about your Bengals. The more I talk about this game, I feel like I should just go bet the over and, enjoy.
Yeah. I like the Bengals D. I think they're feisty. They're healthy, getting some good play out of their rookie class that started to emerge. So yeah, it's going to be a good football game. All right. I got a tackle prop. It's still available for folks. We're going to go with one of our kings. We're going to go Rayshon Jenkins, Jacksonville Jaguars, over 6.5 tackles and assists. This is available still at MGM at plus 100 and Caesars at minus 106. We played it earlier today on DraftKings, and I think it's like minus 130. So prefer the other books if you have the opportunity to do so. I have Jenkins right on this number from a projection standpoint. And then I dug into it a little bit because we only have 4 games, so we can get a little bit more in the weeds here. And I was looking, and there's part of that number, his snaps per tackle and assist number is 9.7, which is really strong for a safety. It's actually dragged down a little bit by some poor performances early in the season. Weeks 1, 2 tackles, weeks 2, 3 tackles. And I looked a little bit more into where he's playing and what's shifted. At the time, early in the season, he was playing a lot of free safety snaps. Free safety is, in most instances, pre-snap and post-snap, the guy furthest away from the play. He's the guy, the last line of defense. He was barely playing at all in the box meaning where the linebackers are at the line of scrimmage. Obviously, probably makes sense for anyone. There are more tackle opportunities inside the box. His box safety or his box snap rate has spiked massively. He's barely playing free safety at all. It's gone from 63%. Last week, it was 16%. That's shifted. And now instead of playing 15% in the box, he's played 46, 34, 46, 42. He's in and around the line of scrimmage. That's coincided with tackle numbers of 7, 7, 9, 18 is the game that we played him over 4.5 against the Cowboys, and he had 18 tackles and assists. So pretty good game there. Again, he's right on the number. It's actually a really good matchup in terms of what safeties have done all season against the Chiefs. When you think about it, they throw a lot over the middle of the field. They don't run a lot, so you get a lot of opportunities for safeties anyway. So Jenkins over 6.5, still readily available. Again, prefer Caesars or MGM if you got it. Again, if you have 365, pretty good ladder opportunity to take some alts on Jenkins here. So Connor, are you in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm firing all the tackle props now. I mean, you're firing on all cylinders. You're hot. I'm just gonna keep riding until until the market dies. Basically, I know that you've gotten limited pretty hard here, and you got to get a little more creative to get down. But that's what they do to the best. They limit the best. They don't want your action anymore. So take it as a compliment from our friends at DraftKings and MGM that you're just too sharp for them. They can't hang.
Pat, we need your help at DraftKings. Your boy is very, very limited at DraftKings suddenly.
You think that I have that kind of pull, please?
I do. If anyone does.
No, I don't. Trust me.
It's tough.
I don't even have DraftKings. I don't even have DraftKings Sportsbook eligible to be in my province.
It's true. Yeah. It's tough. Maybe, I don't know, trying to give them golf outrights. That's happening. They wouldn't take more than $5 on Ben Griffin plus 200 to 1 this week. So not a good spot for me.
So they saved you $5.
They saved me $5, but that's my point. Like if you're limiting me on a 200 to 1 outright, what are we even doing here? So,
you can bet Eric Cole real time 100 to 1 right now. He's in like third place.
I know he's in the mix.
My guy.
Are you on Eric Cole?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I do love Eric Cole. It's just nice to see. Might go bet him right now as we're talking about it.
Yeah.
You haven't live bet anything on this show yet, so I feel like you're due.
I legit lost like $1,000 betting on live on the show last week. So I'm trying to tamp it down a little bit.
A lot of same game parlays last week.
Yeah. They all seem so appealing at the time.
The scrubs did not come through.
No, tough show last week. And the folks of Indiana came out too. Not happy.
I mean, I wouldn't be happy if I lived there either. So there we are.
Oh, love it. All right, Connor.
I did hear about their greatest export, which is depression.
I was wondering where you're going to go with that.
Hey, listen, I'm from like the biggest loser spot in Canada, so I'm not really one to throw stones, but I do enjoy throwing stones. So here we are.
The most common rebuttal was that that there are plenty other states that do more cousin fucking than Indiana. So they were saying we're not that bad. That was their retort,
Yeah, we're not Alabama, but you have to understand that as a Canadian, I have been to Indianapolis. So, I mean, that's really my only experience with Indiana. And that was very nice, but it just seems like one of those places. And you encounter that a lot in Canada too, especially like where I'm from. Like my province has a population, I think of like 1.2 million. And I think 700,000 live in the city I live in. Like you get 20 minutes outside the city, you're in fucking deliverance.
Yeah, the people of Indiana were saying that their CF over expectation is national average, whereas if you go down to Alabama or Kentucky, it tends to be a little bit higher. So,
do you go down to Kentucky? Like, this is the one thing I've never understood about Kentucky. Like, it's like, it's the deep South, Kentucky. It doesn't seem that far south.
No, but it's very south in terms of once you're there, you feel like you're in the South.
Yeah,
neither is West Virginia.
But that's like true. It's very south, but it's like directly below Indiana, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, from someone who grew up from New Hampshire, where like the neighboring town, like on the seacoast, so like just a little north of Massachusetts, but like neighboring town of Maine, you can go to like the seacoast of Maine, and it sounds very much like maybe where Pat lives. But you go anywhere else in Maine, and there are strong Kentucky, strong Indiana, West Virginia vibes going on in the great state of Maine. It's beautiful. But it's a very different part of the country. So,
hey, if I drive 4 hours, I can take a ferry to Maine. Get myself to Bangor, I think.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Bangor.
You're gonna go a little further south in Bangor, get down to like further to the seacoast, even Portland, New York. You have a real good time.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It was always really funny, like because I lived in Toronto for so long. I lived there for like 15 years, and like I was always doing business in Minneapolis for a variety of reasons. And they'd be like, "Oh, it must be so cold in Toronto." I was like, "Motherfucker, like we're south of you. What are you talking about?"
Reed Phillips says hello from Kentucky. Reed, thanks for hanging out in the chat. Sorry, Dan and the folks from Indiana from last week. Continue there, but
like okay, just looking at like the latitude right now, like Kentucky is about on like the same latitude as like Washington D.C.
Yeah, but again, very very different social economic makeup of
No, I understand that part. It's like when you say in like when people in Ohio, it's like, well, we're in the Midwest. It's like you're in the east part of the country.
You're the east.
What are we talking about?
Yeah, you're
Do
in
we
the
like
east time
define
zone.
what these terms were before, like when it was just 13 colonies? Is that what we're talking about? Like, does California not count? Is that not West? That's like a completely different place. Like realistically, like the Midwest would be like Wyoming, or wouldn't it?
Yeah, Colorado. That's just West.
I don't get the American nomenclature because it has absolutely nothing to do with geography.
No, it's almost like cultural based. Like Ohio is a Midwestern state because culturally, they have a couple of cities and mostly it's just like cornfields and nothing. And then they just have that Midwest culture. And just like Wyoming is like, that's a Western state because they're just Western. I don't know. It's like they have that kind of vibe. You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of other also like Midwestern states that I think are kind of West technically. And like, anything west of like Iowa is just kind of like the West.
Yeah.
And like, isn't Iowa almost
like in the middle of
the eastern part of the country?
Yeah.
Probably slightly more in the eastern part of the country. Yes.
Yeah. So see, I find so it just seems like there's a very coastal elite New York bias when it comes to designating who everyone is.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Because we're in Chicago, we're in the Midwest. We're very much east of almost everything, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, think of it this way. Like, what's the drive between Chicago and Toronto? Like 8 hours, 7 hours?
Yeah. Like 6.
6. Yeah. They're very close to each other.
Yeah.
In Canada, Toronto is known as the East Coast, which is not true, but that's when people say in Canada, like, oh, you live out east, you live in Toronto.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's really not a major city.
There's my city. That's it.
Yeah, right. Because even otherwise, you're getting into Ottawa and Montreal, but those are what northeast a little bit more. So you
like they're either north and east. So yeah, once you get past Montreal, Halifax is the biggest city.
Yeah,
and I mean we're a 2.5 hour flight from Toronto.
Jeez. Yeah. I don't understand it either. But we're very much in the Illinois. We're in the Midwest, even though it doesn't make any sense. So,
geography hour, prop geography.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see who we get on next week. We only have 2 games to talk about. So, Connor, we're at your last one, but I know you mentioned you got a lot. So if you want to kind of just shoot us with, unload the clip, let us know what you like. It's still available.
Yeah, we'll start off with Juju over 54.5 receiving yards. I know this is tough because he hasn't been performing as of late, but I think that given the matchup here, Jags have been horrible against slot receivers. You pointed this out last week with the Keenan Allen play. Juju leads the team in snaps from the slot. The last time he played the Jags, he had only 38% snap rate because he was banged up. Only ran 14 routes. Still in those 14 routes, saw 4 targets, had 33 yards. And last time against the Jags, we saw Marquez Valdes-Scantling play a season high 51% slot rate with Juju basically out. And he went for 60 yards. So I think a full complement here of snaps for Juju makes this a pretty good spot for him to go over in a game that I expect, as we talked about earlier, Chiefs to put on the points, to pass a bunch against the Jags defense. It's still bottom 3 in pass DVOA. So great spot for Juju to kind of get back on track here. And another one that I like, Saquon Barkley under on his carries. I'm playing with fire. I get it. It's 15.5 in most spots. But if we kind of look at how this Giants team performs when they're losing, which has been a pretty rare occasion this year, he's played in 6 games where they've lost, and he's gone under this number in 5 of them, with his median being around 14 carries. And I expect the Eagles to win big here. So beyond that, too, they dialed up 11 designed runs for Daniel Jones. He had 17 runs last week, and the Eagles are bottom 3 at defending designed runs in EPA and success rate, and are second worst in QB scramble rate defending that. So I think the Daniel Jones rushing over could be in play, but for me, it was just kind of the Saquon Barkley rushing under because unless they're winning or tied, the only game that he went over basically that they lost was they were tied like midway through the 4th quarter, and he wound up with 20 carries. Other than that, he hasn't had more than 15.
I have a question. I don't necessarily disagree with this, but with you on this, but being that they're the same, I'm looking at DraftKings right now, the 15.5. Why not just go with the ETN under 15.5?
Well, I kind of like that too.
Like, I feel like that one has we've seen games where they've won by a bunch and he doesn't get to this number. And he's most definitely not getting there if they're losing.
Yeah. It's
I think,
on
Connor,
my
I think you messaged me and said that you wanted to hit one of the 2 of those unders. It was ATN and Saquon, right?
Yeah, I'm going to hit probably that one too, to be honest. I think it's a great look. I don't really remember what deterred me from it. I think maybe it was Daigle saying that because ETN plays literally the entire game, but so does Saquon. And I mean, if I expect the Chiefs to score a ton, I mean, ETN's just not going to get a ton of work just in general. I mean, 15.5 carries is a ton. I don't know what the juice is right now. It's kind of been like shifting back and forth. Initially, it was like heavily juiced under, and then it was heavily juiced over. I don't know where we're at this point.
ETN under 15.5 is plus 105 at DraftKings Sportsbook. Oh, as we spoke in real time, it is now plus 100. It just flashed on my screen. They're listening to us.
They're watching.
Yeah.
Damn it, and it's the same for Barkley. It's even money to the under.
Yeah, I'll probably take that too. I mean, at least one of them's going to hit, probably both.
All right. I'm making ETN my final one, by the way. ETN under 15.5 rushing attempts.
I like it. Do you have any other things that you were considering that you wanted to share?
Yes. Ingram over 44.5 receiving yards. Just seems like a really low number for him in this game, where you would expect a lot of catch up, or they get ahead by passing a whole bunch. Those are just very easy completions. Like we saw last week in catch up mode against the Chargers, just all Ingram all the time. Zay Jones to that point too, only 52.5 seems like a pretty low number. Ayuk 53.5, but these were all almost exactly in line with my projections. The other ones are kind of completely off the board, either way under or way over. That's why I tended to lean with those. Hayden Hurst, as I mentioned, over 3.5 receptions. Yeah, that's really where I was. I was thinking Burrow over 11.5 rushing yards. I went and looked. He hasn't been over that number in ages.
No. You might need to put a little bit more on the line here, but if he's kind of like in the zone to get the ball out quick, I don't know. I mean, because it's either going to be get the ball out quick or take a sack probably. So yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth because he is another guy. He is definitely capable of running. I mean, we've seen him like he is pretty reasonably athletic for a guy who's like mostly a pocket passer.
Can live bet Tom Kim be my play?
Yeah, you can live bet Tom Kim.
I mean, I bet him before the tournament, but now he's down to like 5-1 or something because he can't miss putting.
This is what Tom Kim does. He gets red hot. That's why I'm on my Taylor Montgomery this week, hoping that Taylor Montgomery continue to just putt at a unsustainable rate. And it's the place we call the Birdie Fest. Unsustainable putting contest, right, from John Rahm last year. So give me the best putter in the field over the last 12 calendar months, and got off to a good start yesterday. So
not
what are we
so
betting?
Much today.
What are we betting? Tom Kim winner right now?
I don't even know what he's at anymore. I saw he
18-1 right now.
He's what to 1?
18-1 on another website that I
mean, that's not bad actually.
All right, I'll throw some lunch money on it. Let's ride.
Yeah, I'm seeing 16-1. Finau's still at 40. Like he's dropped to 40 because he's off to a bad start today, but like who cares?
That's my guy Taylor Montgomery. Yeah, Taylor Montgomery's still 1 under today through 4.
Yeah, he was 1 over. That's why I say
okay.
That.
Still in the mix.
Yeah, Tom Kim's just 6 under through 8 holes. He's like, yeah, let's go. Let's make. I banked all those missed putts from the last 2 weeks. I'll make them all today.
Yeah, he's so hot and cold. This is just Rahm's world though right now, which is terrifying. So
yeah, he's 2-1 to win.
Yeah. That worked out for Spieth last week live Thursday night at 5-1, and then misses the cut. So Rahm in a different world with the putter right now, though. So, all right, I am going to give you
Eric Cole.
Eric Cole. I got a bunch. Let me see. So I have some tackles. I'll share the tackles that I played, and I don't think that they, for the most part, are available. I played Mike Hilton, the Cincinnati cornerback. I went from 3.5 to 4.5. Maybe you're playing Prize Picks or something like that, or Vivid. Maybe you still find the 3.5 on Hilton like that quite a bit. Played Teron Johnson, a cornerback for the Bills, over 4.5. That got juiced up now to like minus 160. I'm not chasing and laying that juice, but again, could be a viable look on pick'em sites if you like it. Again, just kind of fits the narrative of a lot of passes there in that game. Same thing, Tre'Davious White. He's actually probably the one that's closest to being still available, over 3.5 tackles. The juice looks like it's not out of control in places. Again, correlates well with high pass rate from Cincinnati. He's not going to like shadow Jamar Chase, but we've seen him. They'll meet up a lot on the outside when they put Chase on the perimeter. Strong tackler, topped this a number of times in the last since he's been active this season. And again, I think he's going to get a ton of chances here. So 3.5, pretty low threshold. There's a couple other guys. One guy that we were talking about earlier in terms of what Jacksonville does defensively. I like the under on Devin Lloyd. Lloyd first-round rookie for Jacksonville at linebacker. Got off to a great start. Was playing every down and was putting up some massive numbers. And now is basically started in the Kansas City game, actually. And he is a massive problem in pass defense. And he started to lose snaps to Chad Muma. And now I don't really know how to project his snaps. He's been anywhere from like 40% to like 70%. I have him even at like 70%, and he's like right on 5.5. So there's a good chance that he goes back down and plays like 50% of the snaps here. And then under 5.5 is a really good look. Linebackers also have not been a great spot against Kansas City this season too, because again, they don't run traditionally. You don't get a lot of those around the line of scrimmage tackles. So linebackers have to make some coverage tackles, and that is not Devin Lloyd's MO. So Lloyd under 5.5, I think, is an interesting look. In that same game, I really want Trent McDuffie. They posted him last week. They did last week add some props late tackles on like right after inactive. So I think Trent McDuffie is going to be 3.5. There's been a role switch there with L'Jarius Sneed, which is why if you are a subscriber, you see Sneed popping in projections, and why we're not playing it is because Sneed has now been moved to the outside versus being primarily a box and like slot guy. And we've seen him go from like consistently 6-7 tackles every game. He's been a play we've made a lot. He's got 3 in each of the last 2 games. So he might even be worth an under if that kind of continues. That's been one that I definitely want to see. Some of the other ones that I'm looking at, I think Leighton Vander Esch is probably a pretty good look. I wish the number wasn't out to like -135 because I have him kind of right around this number, but I just think it's a pretty good spot for scorekeeper data for visitors in San Francisco. I think you're going to see a lot of rushing attempts here in this game. I like the Niners, and Vander Esch has been playing a ton over the last couple of weeks before he got hurt, and then came back and played 100% of the snaps last week as well. So those are some of the tackle looks. Again, some of them might be more relevant for pick'em sites now than playing some of the juice that our subscribers got. But the lesson here, subscribe, $19, 4for4.com/plans. So
does Code Mayo work on that one too?
Code Mayo does not currently work on that one, but something that we are open for next year.
Let's see here. Rayshon Jenkins over 6.5 tackles.
Yep.
ETN under 15.5 rushing attempts. Ingram over 43.5 receiving yards, 6-1.
I like it.
Yeah, that's great.
Subscribers want to know about Nick Bolton and Foye Oluokun. So like in the tackle space, these are our this is like talking about they're literally number 1 and number 2 in tackles on the season, and we played them a lot. It just isn't a good matchup for either of them on paper. They're both 9.5. It's big numbers. Again, like they're crushing this often. I will probably end up playing them, even though there's not a lot of like statistical matchups, just because like the range of outcomes for these guys to get 15 is, I don't know. Oluokun's been doing that pretty consistently. Bolton's been just as you need a dozen tackles. He's just doing it all the time. They both fell short in the first matchup of the season, which again kind of speaks to why it's not a great matchup. But I don't know. I like having tackles, one on each side. So when the game's going on, it doesn't matter. I have a guy to root for tackles, regardless of what's going on in the game. So those are the two, again, literally 1 and 2 in tackles on the season with Oluokun and Nick Bolton.
I don't know when it happened, but I think at some point during, I don't know, maybe in the beginning of this year, you were like sucked up by like an alien ship, and then your brain was rewired to only pay attention to tackles, defensive players, and, tackles and assists, because you've come back a changed man. Because we used to say the same thing with offensive players. That's what, most people are like, oh, I want offensive players on, both sides, like it's, that's how I like, but I guess you're looking at it like, oh, I want guys who are going to tackle on both sides of the ball.
Well, it happened. We were watching football, and it was the Kansas City and the Bengals game. It was Jamar Chase just came back. We're like, boom, there he is. And I'm like, yeah, Nick Bolton. He tackled Jamar Chase on his first reception. So I was excited about Bolton getting the tackle. You were excited about Jamar Chase coming back and getting a reception. So, yeah, it's a soft market until they take it away from us. I think we can exploit it. And I like having I've already tasked Sam, our tools and data guy, with a couple other things for next year from like a formation standpoint and quarterback heat maps, so we can get even more granular to make some of these decisions and add to the plethora of tools at 4for4. So, all right, gentlemen. I think that's it. We did geography hour. We gave out about 25 plays. I think we're good. Pat, you want to tell everyone where they can find your stuff and where they can get their live golf bets moving forward?
Yes. Well, Mayo Media Network is where you want to go. For golf, we have a research show on, research show on Sunday, my bet show with Feinberg on Monday, Tambo and Kenny on the D-Gens for first look DraftKings picks. On Tuesday, me and Tambo for final bets, DraftKings picks, ownership, one and done. That's on Wednesday. Live showdown on Thursday night, live showdown on Friday night. Then we repeat the process. Plus, all the NFL you can handle. Pat Mayo Experience running 7 days a week at the moment. So I'm going on vacation soon once all this is over. Connor, where'd you go in Mexico?
I was in Cancun and Playa del Carmen.
What are you, 19 years old?
Kind of.
Yeah. I mean, not that young, but no, it's, I don't know. My family's been going there for a while. So it's been, we got a little timeshare down there. It's a little quiet place. I'm not going to hit up the club. It's not going to Coco Bongo or anything. But plenty of margaritas and tequila though.
No, Playa del Carmen's quite nice. I was there about 4 years ago. I just rented an Airbnb when I was there, which is really the way to go in a lot of these places. Like if you're going to, I just know so many people that go to resorts when they go to these places. Like, well, it depends on where you go, right? Like
For sure.
Playa del Carmen is such sort of like a touristy place now, at least like the 7 blocks that you can go to, is that you don't need to be on a resort there. Like if you're going on a resort, you're at like Mayakoba. Like you're going to play golf the entire time. And, usually when you go with your wife, that's not what you're doing.
Yeah, and you're missing out on some awesome like food. They have some great food in Playa, some awesome restaurants. It is definitely touristy, but like if you're in a resort, you're pretty much just only eating the resort. So usually not that good of food.
Yeah, so like I just booked Cabo for April. Like I'm only there for 4 days, but like we are going to a resort. But from what I can tell, I haven't been to Cabo. Is that it's pretty easy to get around and into the city at the same time. Like you don't have to stay on the resort, which is nice.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I always like taking some trips out. Then you get to try some, mixing with the locals, go to see some fun stuff outside the resort. Because if you're just staying in the resort, then I don't know. I just feel like it's not that fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm not going on vacation with my wife, but I am going on a golf vacation 1st of March. I'm excited. Did Hilton Head last year. We're doing Myrtle Beach. I'm excited to dust off the clubs. I got to get my body moving because I want to make sure that I am not sore for that. But I'm very, very excited to get out there and swing the golf clubs. Pat, what are you doing for a content schedule this week? Because again, the Farmers, Wednesday through Saturday.
Tambo brought this to my attention. I was not even aware of this.
Yes.
So
I tweeted out a reminder yesterday that, because I was looking at it and I'm like, I want to get a jump start. I remember they did this last year and yes, they're doing it again.
Yeah. So I'll probably record my research show tomorrow. Probably put it out, early as possible on Sunday, video and audio. Do the show normal time with Feinberg on Monday morning, and then I'll probably record with Raza on Tuesday afternoon for the DraftKings show because Tambo's out because he has his prior commitments on a Tuesday. We always record on a Wednesday, and then I do like talking to Ben, so the more I can bring in Ben, the better. That's going to be fun. And then I would kind of wish that golf was Wednesday to Saturday. That would be really nice.
It would be nice. I feel like by Tuesday afternoon I'm good anyway. So the extra day is like just a drag. So
and it gives me then I can kill time on a way. Like the biggest benefit for all the fun that we talk about betting on golf, DraftKings golf, whatever it might be, is that it gives you something to pay attention to for like 8 hours during your workday on a weekday.
Yeah, I love that. Put it on the background and you can sweat occasionally, and the coverage is always awful, but especially this week. But it's always fun to have it on in the background. So
the live feeds haven't been so bad this week. I saw people complaining about them, but they were like, well, it's just a locked off. We can't be complaining about that. That's the first thing we cannot be doing, because all we wanted for ages was just tape an iPhone to a tree just so we can see what's going on. And they've kind of done that for this course. They've just set up hard cams at a few of these holes, and they're just like, yeah, we'll cut to this when there's players on it. Like some of the guys are like weirdly out of focus and stuff like that. It's kind of funny, but like I can see what's going on. It's great. And other people are like, wow, the camera's not good enough for that. It's like, fuck off. Like this is all we wanted.
Yeah, they're on 3 courses. We got to just take a little bit of outlaw tour style coverage and do whatever we got to do here to have cell phone coverage. So,
ooh, Lingmerth is rallying. Let's go, Lingmerth.
Lingmerth, there. You on Lingmerth this week, Matt?
I am on Lingmerth this week.
All right.
He's in a lineup that I have that has Xander, Burns, and Davis Thompson. So I really need him to make the cut.
Really need a Lingmerth. Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Didn't get to listener questions. There weren't that many.
Give me one. Give me one. I want to answer it, and that'll be I'll be like the judge.
Talked about that. Here you go.
It doesn't matter what your question is, pal.
Brian Sullivan, thanks. T.Y. Hilton, Dusty. Leave it alone. All right, good stuff as always, gentlemen. Connor, you ready? We're leaving. We're outroing. For Connor and Pat.
Oh, shit.
I'm Ryan. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.